Right, welcome to this video. We're going to talk about buy, borrow, die's biggest objections. So if you clicked on this video, you've probably already heard of buy, borrow, die, and you've got the common objections of how do they repay the loan? You know, is this only for rich people? You know, the biggest common objections that people have. And do you know what I've really found? The objections, it's not a financial debate. It's more of a worldview debate. It's a mindset debate. It's the difference between someone with a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. Because really, finance and numbers are just logical, you know, it's just maths, right? But the money's more psychology than anything else. And that's what I really found when people constantly comment on videos online about what did they do about this and what did they do about that. So I really just want to break it down. So I truly believe that the wealth gap is really a knowledge gap. That's the sort of blunt reality. And a lot of people disagree with that. But if you learn this information, you can create generational wealth for your children, for your family, and for your future. Because it's just, this is what the billionaires and the wealthy people are doing. And it's common knowledge in places like Canary Wharf and the private bank institutions in Switzerland and whatnot. So if you can actually take this knowledge and apply it, you can reap the rewards in the future. And it's unbelievable what you can actually accomplish. So, buy, borrow, die, if you don't already know what it is, the rich people, they buy assets, they never sell the assets, they borrow against the assets, take a loan out at a low interest rate, and allow the asset to just continue to grow and grow and grow. They might use the loan to buy another asset and let that asset grow, but the point is they do not sell assets because assets go up in value. So why would you sell something that goes up in value? You know, it's appreciating, like stocks. I like to use the S&P 500. That's the example I'm going to use in this video. So, this is how generational wealth is built. Okay, you see the dynasties. You've heard of people like the Walton family or the Rockefellers, Rothschilds. You've heard about these dynasties, and you probably think, well, how did they get so rich? I'm going to tell you how they got so rich. Okay, so as you already know, they buy the asset. They never sell the asset. They take loans out against it. The first thing that people ask when they hear about this is, oh, but the loan, how do they repay the loan? What about the interest payments? And what about this and what about that? That's all coming from scarcity mindset, the complete opposite to how the wealthy view debt. They view debt as like a tool. They look at it as how to free up liquidity to use and spend the money. Because why would they don't want to sell their assets? It's going to go, why would I sell something that's going to go up in value? This is what the majority of people that are in the stock market or investing, this is what they do. They just think about buying low and selling high and getting that gains. They don't utilize compound growth, which is the eighth wonder of the world, because when you actually see the maths behind the returns, you understand why they do this. However, realistically, right, what do they do with the loan? Right, so it's not like a car loan, right? It's not like they're taking out a car loan and paying back a car loan. It's because this is what the poor and middle class have been trained that debt is always a liability. And the majority of it is, if it's consumer debt, it's a liability. Most of the debt that everyday people are utilising is proper liability debt because it's not really tied to an asset. The point is, they're not necessarily paying it back. The assets pay the loan back. So it's not you, it's the assets doing the work. Imagine you have 100,000 invested in the S&P 500, okay? And you decide, I want to take a loan out of 10,000. That's a 10% loan to value. So you have your 10,000 and your 100,000 in the portfolio. Let's imagine, okay, that's a very extreme example, but let's say your portfolio doubled in value. Your portfolio is worth 200,000 and you've only borrowed 10,000. So now your loan to value is 5%. So it's a tiny little bit of debt against the massive portfolio. Okay, so the portfolio grows, the debt gets smaller. Now what do we know about cash? Inflation erodes cash. You know this, right? I'm not going to sit and explain inflation to you. If you had 10,000 50 years ago, you could probably buy a house. Can you buy a house now with 10,000? Definitely not. So see, people know about inflation, but they don't apply it to debt. They don't think about the same thing as debt. It's like, oh, I owe this money, and it's a low interest. If it's a low interest rate, why are the wealthy in a rush to pay it off? They're not in a rush to pay it off. The only time you're in a rush to pay off debt is when the rate is probably higher than inflation. Whereas the wealthy get these loans at an extremely cheap rate. So it's worth their while to just use a loan. Okay, so you want the real simplest answer as well, in a nutshell of how they can repay the loan. Life insurance. There you go. Easiest, simplest solution. Life insurance pays it off. That's why it's called buy, borrow, die. They have a life insurance policy, boom, debt's all wiped out with the money from the life insurance policy, and their children keep all the assets, and they just do the whole thing all over again, and they pass it on to their children. So it's a constant loop. That's how you've got these dynasties. They have so much wealth. Now, do they just never repay the debt their entire life? Am I saying there's never a place where they should deleverage? And yes, they should actually deleverage, but it's a lot more straightforward than you think. Assets rise during liquidity expansion. So when the rates are low, right? Federal Reserve has rates at, like, say 0%. Let's pretend we're back in like 2021, right? COVID happened, big crisis. Okay, greatest wealth transfer in history. People think that's like, was all planned and it's a conspiracy and blah blah blah. The greatest wealth transfer just always benefits people that hold assets. So if you hold assets, you will naturally just benefit in a crisis, because normally what ends up happening is liquidity gets injected into the market, into the economy, and assets go up. That's that simple. So assets go up during liquidity expansion, and assets will crash during liquidity contraction. Because this is the other biggest objection. Oh, what do I do if the market crashes? If the market crashes and your assets go down in value and you've got a loan? Great question. So it's wiser well, first of all, you shouldn't be borrowing extremely high loan to values. Okay, you don't get greedy. That's a point. They don't get greedy. The bigger the portfolio, the less need there is to borrow anyway. So for example, okay, you don't get greedy, you're borrowing like a 10% loan to value, a 20% loan to value. The purpose of that loan is so you can use that for a lifestyle cost that doesn't interrupt compounding, so you don't need to sell your stocks. Okay, you've got that. So liquidity contraction, before the market's going to go into liquidity contraction, so that's before the Fed Reserve hike the rates. Okay, so let's go back to 2022. The Federal Reserve hiked the rates, the assets go down, liquidity is contracted. That is, you would better be in a position to deleverage before that happens. But you're going to say, but Chris, how do I know when liquidity is going to contract? That's a whole other video, because it's far more simpler than you realise. It's not as complicated as you think it is. See, most people are investing completely blind. They're just reliant on Bloomberg News and CNBC and the media. That's just reactive investing. Oh, this is happening, this is happening. Oh, the market's the S&P 500 is overvalued. It's overvalued, it's the same valuation as it was in the 2000 dot-com bubble. There's going to be a crash. I don't care how overpriced the market is. Do you know what decides if the market's going to go up or down? Liquidity. Liquidity is all that matters. Just strip away all the noise and focus on what truly matters, and it's liquidity. Is liquidity expanding? Doesn't matter. I don't care how overpriced the S&P 500 is, it will continue to rise. So, deleverage before liquidity contracts, and you are in a safer position, but again, you're managing your portfolio in a wise, responsible way. While we're on compound growth, listen to these numbers. 10,000 invested in the S&P 500 with reinvested dividends over 10 years becomes £25,000, okay, or $25,000. 10,000 invested, again, with reinvested dividends over 100 years becomes £137 million or dollars, or whatever you want to be. And that's just insane. That's with an average of 10% return. Do you see how powerful compound growth is? 10k invested over 100 years, and yes, you're going to say, but who? I'm not going to be alive in 100 years. That's not the point. The point is, that's how generational wealth is built. So now I'm asking you the question, why would you sell your stocks? Why would you sell your stocks if they continue to go up in value? It's more difficult with individual companies, okay? I can't tell you that Apple's going to be around for the next 100 years. But if you've got an ETF and you're doing the S&P 500, you're always picking the winners. So it makes a bit more sense. The next biggest objection, only the rich can do this. Translation, I will never have enough assets to matter. They just outright dismiss it. Scarcity mindset, not an abundance mindset. The lenders who give these loans out, they don't even care if you're rich or poor. All they care about is what collateral you've got. It's universal. In fact, they won't even ask you how much your income is. It's not like going to the bank and asking for a mortgage. Oh, I earn this, I have this much money, I make this much money a year. These brokers and private banks and institutions that give these loans out do not ask these questions. You won't even get credit checked, you won't get an income check. They only care about one thing, and it's your collateral. What collateral do you have? Do you have stocks? Do you have bonds? If you have bonds, they'll give you more. They'll give you more against a bond because it's pristine collateral. A US Treasury is always going to get repaid. The point is, you are in this game of finance, you're in this game of money, you have no choice, you have to play, right? You might not want to play, and you might say, this is unfair, the rich should be paying tax and helping people. You can take that point if you want, right? Do that all day long, but if you don't play the game the way the winners play it, you're not going to be a winner. That's just the facts, and that's just the truth. So you're either on the losing side or the winning side. How do the losers play? The losers play, they pay capital gains tax. They have high consumer debt. They sell their stocks for income, or is it for lifestyle? They don't use tax wrappers. They don't even invest at all. They have a scarcity mindset, and they save their money in cash. Wealth is not income. This is the biggest misconception. If someone asks you what's your net worth, do you give them your income? No, you don't give them your income. You give them your net worth, your assets, minus your liabilities. Just like a balance sheet. Everyone has their own personal balance sheet. That's all it is. So people are tied up to, if I make this much money, I'll be wealthy. Depends what you do with that money. If you put the money into compound growth, S&P 500 or stocks and bonds, then yes, you will be. It depends it's more important with what you do with the money. You ever watch Dave Ramsey's radio phone calls, and you have people that make like 300 grand a year phoning in, and they make 300 grand a year, but they spend 350 grand a year, and they're tied up in debt, consumer debt. So it depends how you play the game. You can have someone who earns like 50 grand a year, invest their money wisely, they have more of a higher net worth than someone that makes 300 grand a year. Okay, so this is what you need to think about. Do you know what the other biggest objection I love? The biggest other objection is, oh, but what can I really buy with this 137 million in 100 years? Okay, they see the compound interest calculators and they say, oh, but with inflation that won't be worth anything. And it's so funny because all right, now you address inflation, now you accept inflation exists. So what's your alternative plan? Do you know what they don't have an alternative plan? Because these are the people that don't invest. The people that don't invest, they just probably save their money in the bank, save their money in cash, and just don't want to even have any investment at all. They view the society is to view the stock market as risky, to view it as a gamble. This is on purpose. I don't know if it's on purpose, but it's not. You're not taught and trained about buy, borrow, die, because if everyone knew this, if every citizen had true financial literacy, they really understood how bad. If you viewed your finances the same way a bank does, and we had a large part of society that knew how to operate finance, they would have so much more power, so much more control, and so much more be able to influence government decisions and banks, far more leverage as a society. If society understood this, they understood like a balance sheet, understood capital flight, and understand their true power and potential. Okay, so come away from having a scarcity mindset, have a mindset of abundance, and the wealth gap is the knowledge gap. So subscribe to this channel. I will go into way more details than all this. This is just scratching the surface. It genuinely is scratching the surface. The point is, you buy your assets, you don't sell the assets, you borrow against the assets, and you're responsible. I hope I covered, everything I wanted to cover in the video. So how do you repay the loan? Okay, as far as repaying the loan, they can either use life insurance, they can deleverage before liquidity contracts, and you can also use the actual assets pay back the loan by shrink. They continue to grow, outgrow the debt. Debt gets smaller, the assets get bigger. The same strategy the government uses with their debt. You ever wondered why the US debt doesn't get paid off, but GDP goes up? They care more about GDP going up than paying off the debt. So you're copying the same strategy the government use, right? The same strategy the government use. Let inflation wipe out their debt. Their GDP. They focus more on growth. Every developing nation does this. They focus more on the growth. They chase growth rather than paying down all the debts. Like Dave Ramsey would be completely against all this teaching. He's correct about 99.9% of finance, but his audience are like the infant version of the finance sector. His program is literally called Baby Steps. What does that tell you? It's for people that need their hand held, and they need to be told exactly what to do. Whereas this channel is for people that are wanting to take want to chase real wealth. They want real wealth. They want to know there's another way of doing things. There's another strategy. It's not just about saving all the money in the bank. Anyway, I'm going on to a bit of a rant here. End of the video. So if you like the channel, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll make more videos and I'll go into more detail. So leave your comments below. Thank you.